other comments about this. I think the film is wonderful. And it was either Terry or Stephanie, one of them came with me today and thanked me for suggesting that they see if the Eisenhower Library had any more films than we had. But I wanted the people to see this exhibit, to see what President Eisenhower said. And I did it because today, once again, we seem to have been infected with the virus, stating that anything the federal government does, any exercise of federal power, is somehow squashing democracy and bad. And that our real enemy in life is the federal government. All regulations are bad, and you get ready. If you get rid of anything, it's good. All taxes are bad, all tax cuts are good, no matter what they do with the economy. We're back into living a cartoon world that our framers never intended this to be in. Remember, the genius of the American Constitution is that it was clear enough to protect individual rights and liberties, flexible enough to allow the government to change as we march through time. And that our framers gave us a vision that would always be relevant. Our job is to form a more perfect union. What they said. We pledge our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor to form a more perfect union. And we're giving you a system that will permit you to do the exact same thing. In 1876, 1976, 2076, and from now down to the end of time. There will always be a debate about how to do that. But no part of that debate can ignore the history that our framers recognized the government abuses power, and that we were organized by people who hated the abuses of individual citizens by autocratic, unresponsive monarchies and what the previous administration called the old Europe. But they didn't say we're against people because of where they're from and who they are. They said our job is to form a more perfect union. And if you remember the cause of the Little Rock Nine and the resistance of Governor Faubus to them, and how wildly popular it was in the moment. It is important to remember one fundamental thing about democracy, and this is what we got to be pulling for with the Egyptians and everybody else. We cannot have a majority that is just, a democracy is just majority rule anymore. Real democracy is the rule of law, minority rights, and individual rights, along with majority rule in terms of who holds the levers of power. You cannot have a democratic movement in the modern world unless you also have certain inalienable individual rights and protection of minorities, whoever they are. Egypt is a Muslim country, the center of all Muslim scholarship for hundreds of years, with Coptic Christians who go back to the very beginning of the Christian faith. So I say that. The Little Rock Nine is Exhibit A for the modern world. It's just as relevant today as what they're dealing with in Egypt, throughout the Middle East, and what we're debating in Washington, as it was in 1957. What Eisenhower was for his country was a genuine conservative Republican. He did not want to use the power of the federal government to integrate the Little Rock schools. Jim got down and said, all of us are of a certain age, we all remember. But he believed in equal opportunity. He had been the commander in a war where black soldiers helped save freedom and then came home to less than freedom. He knew better than the current situation. He just was afraid that if he used the power of the federal government, being a conservative, that it would relieve state and local people of responsibility and it would fundamentally alter the way we did other things, more normal things, more mundane things in America. And so he debated it, and then there was the Supreme Court rule, and he did it. And you heard why he did it. He didn't beat around the bush or take much time to say it. That was a whole speech. Only time I ever gave a speech that short was when I was governor, and I bet Dale Bumpers $20 I could give a shorter speech. Standing on the bridge at Pierce Ferry when it was 112 degrees in the shade, and people were dropping out. He spoke for 45 seconds, and I spoke for 32. I still got a $20 bill. But look, it was great. You saw it. And I want you to remember those words. And go look at it again before you leave. And remember those words when you see these debates unfolding in Washington. One of the largest, most successful urban school districts in America, in North Carolina, there was a huge busing plan designed to integrate people not just racially, but economically. Based on decades now of evidence that when really poor people who come from families under stress or from broken homes get to spend time in stable environments with lots of supportive adults, turns out they're just as smart as everybody else, and they do just as well as everybody else. And now, we all of a sudden have to... After all, this was the promise of Little Rock Central High School. You read Carlotta's wonderful memoir, or Melville's, or you listen to any other tales these folks have told. They debate was assuming that the kids that she was trying to get in the door, whether or not they had a good, stable, two-parent family at home, would be living within the embrace of what we now call, I think wrongly, but we call sort of middle-class values. But the government should be used to guarantee the opportunity. Now in North Carolina, they say, oh, this, we're not perfect, we still got some problems. These kids really haven't done all that much better. So we're going to stop this mixing by not only race, but by income. And let's let these people go to school. I couldn't make this up. Let's let these kids go to school with more of their own time. Maybe they'll be more comfortable in doing it. So help me. Conservatism means something very different today than it did in 1957. In 1957, we knew we could have our ferocious arguments and still reach across the partisan divide, because both sides were devoted to creating a more perfect union. And nobody in America, we were still close enough to World War II, or anybody to try to say with a straight face that there is something inherently wrong with the government of the United States. So, when you go up, let me just say on our side, 20 years later, I suggested they call the Eisenhower and get this film. I didn't know what it would be like. I just remember as a little boy, did Dwight Eisenhower talk to me, and I just thought he was an American. I couldn't tell whether he was a Republican or a Democrat, a liberal or conservative, because this is right, and this is the way the Constitution works. He was forming a more perfect union. 20 years later, and we tried to get a picture of this into this. When Jim Guy has just gone on to Congress, and I have succeeded him as Attorney General, in September of 1977, without the Little Rock, now we had a 20th anniversary observation of the integration of Little Rock Central High School in the auditorium at Central High School, and the main speaker was Jesse Jackson. Now, most people think of Jesse Jackson as the left-wing Democrat, and back then he still had a full head of hair. And he's never been afflicted by shyness. And everybody was wondering what he was going to say. You know what Jesse Jackson said? He looked at those kids and said, if you do drugs, if you violate the law, if you drop out of school, you have betrayed the sacrifice of what these people did to you.